Yo, what's good, y'all? Thank y'all for tapping into the fifth installment of Brodcast Wrestling. It's your boy Brody, and hope everybody is doing good this week. It's been a good week for me, living life, having fun, but it's not been a big week for wrestling, in all honesty, for me. Just because I have been busy doing a lot of different things and trying to get some things going that I'm going to talk about towards the end of this episode. So this one, I kind of wanted to circle back to what I was talking about last week, and that was the CM Punk situation with AEW. He got fired, officially terminated with cause, as they said. And I decided that I wanted to circle back that because last week was more of a reactionary sort of thing. The news had dropped the day before, and of course, as these things always tend to happen, more things came out during the week. So now it's a lot of different things going on, but I really want to express how I see the next phase of this situation going, because I don't think this situation is over by any stretch. I think it's going to be a long sort of process that's going to be one of the funnier things in wrestling, honestly. But between that and then I also want to talk about Gunther becoming the longest reigning all-time Intercontinental Champion, which is a big deal because that record has been around for like 30 years, 40 years. And for someone like Gunther to be able to break it, it's something I want to speak on, especially, because Gunther is a wrestler that I like, I'm a fan of. So I'm going to talk about that. And then also going to close the show out with more news, more kind of what to expect with Brodcast Wrestling going forward, because I want this platform, I want this show to be something different. I want it to be my own. I want it to be personal to you all, because this is a journey situation that I'm going through. I'm going on a wrestling journey where I'm going to explore different areas, talk about different areas, and look into different areas. But how can I creatively do that so everyone can get the max amount of entertainment from it, the max amount of information from it? And yeah, so I just want to talk about that because I have some things that I'm looking to do, and just explaining how this show is going to work going forward. So, but yeah, let's start out talking about the CM Punk situation and his beef with All Elite Wrestling now that he's fired. Last weekend, he was fired Saturday night right before his show, Collision. Tony Khan went on national television and pretty much made a statement saying how he was in fear of his life, he was in fear of his staff's lives, and that is the cause in which he was fired. Now, the thing about this situation, as I spoke about last week, is more that everyone here within this situation is at fault. CM Punk is at fault because he shouldn't be walking around fighting people, thinking that he's the biggest, baddest guy in the room and try to impose leadership that way. Because as that locker room has showed itself to be, they don't really do well with that. They're more of a family, tight-knit, clicked-up sort of group. And when you're in environments like that, you have to be able to bend, mold yourself around that if you want to be a good leader. And CM Punk, although I think his intentions were in the right place with everything and all his grievances, that still doesn't change the fact that he was putting hands on people. And you just really cannot do that in a work environment, because that can lead to a lot of different things. And it's led to this. It's led to his firing. But in terms of the Elite, where I think the Elite go wrong is that I do truly believe that they are planning stories. Because the thing that since I've gotten on this wrestling journey and the things that I've done on the Twitter spaces and all that, the first thing that I really picked up on was that everybody has their own biases. They have people that they're trying to pretty much get themselves in the room with it or have a close relationship within the space of wrestling media, period, whether you're a podcaster, a content creator, journalist, whatever it is. Because a lot of these things are opinion-based, there are people that are going to just be fans of someone and really want to get next to them in all honesty, or say that you have a close relationship or get legitimized by them for certain things. And I think in this situation, The Elite definitely did that with some of the more bigger name wrestling journalists that are out there who were putting out these stories. And whether they were true or not, the fact that they were always getting out, and it was never them getting out on the side of CM Punk. That's how you know someone is planting this information, because it was always from the other person's side of, well, such and such came in and attacked me, and then CM Punk's side has to put out a statement saying this is what happened in their opinion. So that makes me really believe, okay, there's clearly something going on here, and there was a bit of a sabotage. And I know that's a strong word that I used last week, and that's why I want to flesh this out a little bit, but it was that level of, all right, we're going to try to get this dude out of here. And we know that we already know that we can burst his bubble and make him snap to the point where he's publicly going after us. He's gotten physical with them. And I just think this whole situation, the way that it was handled on their end, the Elite not wanting to meet with him, which I understand, I got into a physical altercation. But if someone is trying to meet with you and say, hey, let's bury this hatchet, let's move on about our lives, not turn this into a bigger issue than what it was. I understand there's a hesitation to meet with someone, but in business, especially if you're executive vice president of a company, which is a huge part of this story, because the Elite, specifically the Young Bucks, I know, are executive vice presidents of this company, which means they hold high rank and regard within the organizational chain. And if you're going to hold high regard on organizational chain, you got to be able to navigate and maneuver your way properly. And when I say properly, I don't mean that you got to walk around in a suit and tie. Nah. I mean more properly as, hey, you have to be the leadership here. Because that essentially is what that executive power represents. It represents leadership. And the Elite did a poor job of doing that during this time. Now, I think that Tony Khan is wrong. And he's another huge part of this story and how everything is played out. Because to me, Tony Khan has handled this as poorly as you can as a business owner. So you have one employee who has a problem with some of the executives within your company. And he has such problems that it gets to the point where he puts them out publicly when he's sitting right next to you. And somehow you as a leader, you as the CEO, as the main man in charge, can't put your foot down and say, y'all aren't going to do this here. It baffles my mind that for someone to be in as close proximity to one of the world's biggest businessmen as anyone else. I mean, because Tony Khan's family, he comes from a billionaire family. His father, Shad Khan, I know, owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't understand how you don't have that gene or how it just doesn't seem like it's in your nature. And I understand it's not in his nature, but you got to be the man to say, you know what, I'm going to put my foot down. This is what it's going to be in this company right now. Y'all aren't going to mess up my money. Y'all aren't going to mess up anything that I have going on here and trying to build something meaningful. And he did a poor job of not even doing anything. Instead of forcing people to work things out, forcing people to have to, if nothing else, be able to get along. It's sad. It's a real sad situation, and he was taken advantage of for this. And I hate that it got to the point to where, he said he was in fear of his life, which, I mean, I think that's something that legally he was probably told to say. I don't necessarily know how in fear of his life that he really was. I mean, it was two average-sized men fighting. They just so happen to be professional athletes. But at the same time, the way that he handled this situation, he didn't stop it. He didn't force, or at least try to make the push to force people to have to get along. And now he has lost his most popular, biggest wrestler in CM Punk, who personally, and this is how I feel the timeline is going to play out here, is that I think that CM Punk he's going to do an interview. He's going to do a sit-down interview. I think he's going to do it with Ariel Helwani, who has already expressed his beefs with Tony Khan, funny enough. I think they're going to link up and do an interview. And that interview is going to happen. And within 2 or 3 days, we're going to see the leaked footage of the fight between Jungle Boy and CM Punk. Because, and let me not... Jungle Boy is who I forgot about and saying who's also at fault here, because Jungle Boy got the sweetest end of this bargain here, where now he's a heel wrestler. Everybody hates him because he got CM Punk about the paint, and he got his vacation out of everything. Which is funny because it's almost like he got everything that he wanted, which makes it even seem even more like there's some sort of collusion going on here to make sure that this man was ousted. And that's my biased opinion. How about that? But, footage of the fight between CM Punk and Jungle Boy is going to leak online. TMZ is going to get a hold of that footage. And I'm curious to see how that footage is going to look. Is it going to look like CM Punk got as crazy as Tony Khan is leading on, or the backstage stories are sort of leading on? Or is this one of those things, because it was also said that within that video and what happened within the fight was, CM Punk, of course, put Jungle Boy in a headlock, but after that he lunged at Tony Khan pretty seriously, to the point where he's going to grab him, from what I've read certain things say, but I take some of this stuff with a grain of salt, because it's one of those things. But still, it's a report that that's what happened. And so, but I'm just curious to see how that video footage is going to look, and how it's going to paint CM Punk, how it's going to paint AEW, how it's going to paint Tony Khan, how is it going to paint everybody? Because it's going to lead to a lawsuit. It's going to lead to all these things. And truth be told, Survivor Series in November is in Chicago. Do I think CM Punk is going to come back there? Based on that stuff happening, I don't see him coming back there. However, the Royal Rumble in January, by then, I do believe everything will be sort of cleared up. And I could see him coming back in January. If he does it in Chicago, to me personally, if he does it in Chicago, he'll get the biggest and best reaction, CM Punk, that is. But his return to WWE should be, one, I think it should be in an event where he can start a meaningful storyline. That's number one. Survivor Series, it's really hard to start a meaningful storyline at Survivor Series, especially as a re-debuting wrestler. And the Royal Rumble is just a perfect platform for that. And plus, there's going to be a lot of legal stuff going on. It's going to be hard for me to see him coming into WWE in November. That quick of a turnaround. That's going to be a big turnaround. And yeah, it's hard for me to see that. But in terms of what I think he does, truth be told, I could see a world where CM Punk brings the AEW championship onto WWE television. As much as WWE wants to act like they don't exist, I can definitely see him doing that as kind of something different, because you just don't see that every day. And plus, I think he's going to trash that sucker. I think he's going to trash it and burn it. And it's going to be hilarious how things are going to play out with that if he does do that. I'm here all for it, that type of beef. I'm all for it, man. So, but all in all, just to put a cap on the CM Punk situation in AEW, it's really, really sad the way things have played out there, and the fact that they did lose their biggest star. People can say what they want about CM Punk as a person, but he makes money. He draws people in, and that is why I think regardless of where he goes, it's going to be a big deal, and it's going to be treated as such. And it's going to bring people into the product because even with AEW, it brought a lot of eyes. CM Punk brought a lot of eyes when he came back. And not only that, but I just think that CM Punk has been, within this last year, been the most talked about wrestler on social media. I mean, people make posts about him constantly. People are constantly trying to figure out what's going on with him and the Elite and AEW and the people that he has all this beef with. He is a talked about star. And not only between that and his UFC experience, if you want to call it that, I mean, he's a household name. And anytime you have a household wrestler name at this point of the game, they're important to the cause. And so when he goes back to WWE, he's going to be very important. He's going to be a big deal. And I think the perfect opponent to put him against, especially if you want to have the World Heavyweight Championship seem like a big deal, it'd be Seth Rollins if he's going to keep that belt going into WrestleMania next year. I do think that there's a storyline to be had with that. And if you want CM Punk to be a babyface, have Priest hold off and cash in Money in the Bank there, or I don't know. There's ways to do it, but coming into his return to WWE, he's going to be a big babyface because that is what he is known as there. And whether or not he wants to play that role it remains to be seen. I think he's a big enough heel at this point to be able to do it, and he's such a fucking good heel. But that's kind of how I see things playing out with him when he gets there. Seth Rollins main event in night one WrestleMania, because at the end of the day, I think that's really all that he wants is his main event at WrestleMania. And I can't be mad at that, man. I really can't. But yeah, enough with the CM Punk talk. I'm tired of it. It's been so many different things written, so much that's been happening. I'm done with it until I see an interview, until I see a video pop up on World Star of them fighting. Honestly, I don't want to talk about it anymore, man. It's just too much going on. I love to hear people's opinions, but I can't talk about it anymore, guys. But now I want to talk about something that is real news, more happy news, more exciting news, and that is Gunther is now the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. And Gunther is one of the best wrestlers in the world to me that I've seen. He's one of my favorites in a very long time. So the thing about Gunther, and this is something that is, and I hate to say this, but it's true. Wrestlers now, they look nothing like they did when I was a kid, right? Like when I was a child, our wrestlers were these big, strong muscle men pretty much. And, they look like, if nothing else, they could whoop your ass. And now, in a lot of ways, wrestlers look like professional athletes, but not necessarily like people that will whoop your ass. And this is an indictment on wrestlers that do look this way. I hate to put it that way, but it's one of those things where it's not the same. It's just not the same anymore. So to find a wrestler like Gunther, where it looks like, if nothing else, he would mop the floor with you, it's so refreshing to me as a fan, because it gives that sense of believability once again, which is something that I think in wrestling now a lot of times is missing. Gunther will chop people, and I've seen these matches where he's chopping dudes, and their chest, all you see is just bruising. It's nuts, and it just makes you believe for like a few minutes, like, man, like because this week he had, to me, probably my pick for match of the year, at least out of all the ones that I've seen this year, it's definitely got to be, this one's up there. And that was the third match between Gunther and Chad Gable. And this match was pretty much the match to seal him becoming the longest reigning champion. And so previously, and this is why I say it's the third match, previously him and Gunther had a 5 minute quote-unquote challenge where Chad Gable had to last 5 minutes in the ring with Gunther, who has not been pinned, hasn't submitted. He hasn't, to my knowledge, he hasn't lost a match at WWE. And of course, Chad Gable is looked at as like a comedy figure, even though he's a legitimate Olympian. And so the first match, Gunther takes him as a joke, man. He doesn't look at Chad Gable like he's any sort of a threat. He like, man, you can't even last 5 minutes with me. Of course, Chad Gable lasts 5 minutes with him in the ring. And Gunther, you know, he looking like, oh, okay, you lasted 5 minutes, all right. And it leads to a second match where Chad Gable wins by countout. And this is after having like a 30-minute match pretty much. Back and forth competitive, and it feels like Chad Gable was going to win. But of course, Gunther gets knocked outside the ring, and he decides to stay to hold his championship one more time. And then it led to this third match. And the thing about this third match is it showed off Chad Gable because he's someone who's very underrated to be, in terms of him being in ring. I mean, like I said, he's legit. And then even as a character, he's funny. Shoes, all that stuff is funny to me. And so to see him be able to be showcased within this 3-match stretch was pretty amazing. It showed a different level. It showed different range for him. And in terms of Gunther, it also showed that he can be beaten. And when I say can be beaten, not necessarily pinned, but he is someone who is looked at like a monster that nobody can conquer, nobody can get past, nobody can beat. And Chad Gable, within these 3 matches, showed, just as a character sort of progression-wise, that Gunther can be taken to the limit, and if he's taken to the limit, he may fold. But enough about that series. Gunther has had a lot of great matches with a lot of great opponents, and like I said before, he's an old school feeling wrestler. Everything about him as a character I'm also into. He's no nonsense. He got Imperium with him. And they stay in line, and if they get out of line, he don't mind putting it back in line. But it's one of those things where I'm just a big fan of Gunther, and I'm happy that he's able to get his flowers, become the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion, and it's only up from here for him. He is going to be a world champion 10 times over if he wants to. And I cannot wait to see how his career plays out after he loses that Intercontinental Championship. Now, personally, I think he's going to lose to Jey Uso. That's why they moved him over there to Raw. I see that happening. Jey Uso deserves his flowers. He deserves a single championship for everything he did with the Bloodline. Because, and like I said in my Bloodline review, he was the real shining star of this group. And with him being on his own at this point, I do think that he will be a big-time player on Raw and will be one of their top baby faces really, really quickly, especially if Cody ends up on SmackDown, which I think is what they're going to end up doing since he got traded there and they haven't named the wrestler going to SmackDown just yet. So, but Gunther, shout out to Gunther, longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. And shout out to the Honky Tonk Man, because he was eating off that record for the last 30 years. And now it's broken, and he's just... I feel bad for him, because he really has been eating off... Hey, I'm the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. Y'all do know that, right? And now he just can't do it anymore. But it's for him, it's all good. He's a legend anyway, so it doesn't even matter. But it's just a fun shout to have the Honky Tonk Man, second longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. But... yeah, so going to shout to him, nothing but up from here, my man. So, but the last thing before I get out of here that I really want to get into in terms of going forward in the podcast and everything, and let me rephrase this by not even calling it a podcast anymore, because to me that's not what I look at Brodcast Wrestling as. I don't look at it as a podcast as much as I look at it as more of an experience, a content journey where you're able to go into these different areas of wrestling alongside myself. And so with that being said, oftentimes over the next, several weeks, I'm going to start switching up the format a little bit. I'm going to start incorporating different things where you can feel and see what I'm talking about in a lot of these things. And me not only going into some of the current product areas, but also venturing off into some of the past stuff as well, because there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of superstar showcases that I want to do. And so I plan to do that, and I plan to bring that to you within Brodcast Wrestling. And so Sunday may be the primary day that I upload things going forward. However, I am going to be looking to start doing some live streams, some Twitter spaces, stuff like that. That way I can interact with people, have fun with it, get these jokes off, because oftentimes wrestling stories are complete jokes. And so, hey, I want to kick it with y'all, be able to give that type of content as well, along with doing the things that I want to do and bring to Brodcast Wrestling and how I want to showcase it. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time, and I cannot wait to bring you all this content going forward. So, and if y'all want to stay on top of all news with Brodcast Wrestling, please follow at Brodcast PW on Instagram and Twitter. Come chop it up, sing your jokes, whatever the case might be, but that's where you can find me on there. If you want to get into anything that's non-wrestling related, go to the Brodcast Network, as this is a Brodcast Network production, at Brodcast Network on Instagram and Twitter, all spelled the same. Everything will be in the description. And if you want to follow me personally, at Life as a Broadcast, Instagram and Twitter. And yeah, man. So thank y'all for tapping into Brodcast Wrestling as always. And I'll catch y'all later. God bless y'all. Peace.